Today I want to look at writing in different genres, and this might be of interest to readers as well as writers because I'm going to look at the aspects of different genres that we look for when we choose a book in a certain category, whether it's crime or romance or historical fiction or a hybrid like historical fantasy. Do you expect different things of different authors? So if you're going to choose the same author but writing in a different genre, how does that affect your expectations? And if you're a writer, what do you need to consider if you're going to write in different genres? You don't want to get pigeonholed perhaps as one type of writer. How do you work writing in very different styles and with the different demands that different types of books have upon the writer? So I'm going to show you some of the books that I've written in different genres and tell you about my experiences of writing those, and hopefully this will be helpful for people who are thinking of doing that themselves. So the first book we're going to look at is The Witch's Daughter, probably the one I'm best known for, and this is firmly a piece of historical fantasy, and that's quite a broad category in itself. That covers all sorts of things. I mean, you think Game of Thrones could be seen as historical fantasy because the setting is a pseudo-medieval historical setting, even though it's not a real setting, and it's obviously fantasy. But my book isn't as high fantasy as that, if you like. It's more historical with a little bit of fantasy. And it's interesting to see how the booksellers have chosen to market the book and chosen to place it in their stores. I mean, it's been in everything from paranormal romance to historical mystery to women's fiction. You'd be amazed at the subcategories of each genre that exist. But because this was the first book that I was successful with, I think it's the one that booksellers in particular, and probably readers too, it's the type of book they think of when they think of my writing. So that has very much set the tone for what my readers' expectations are. And if you're successful with a book, then it's a double-edged sword. It's wonderful to have a success, but then if you want to write something different, you will be always working against that expectation. And for me, this was the type of book that I wanted to write. It's the type of book I enjoy reading. So I loved working in that genre, and I have written, as you probably know, several books in this genre and continue to do so, and it's where I feel very comfortable with my writing and with my reading, in fact. But what was it like when I had to try and write something else? Because these books, there is humour in them, but they are quite dramatic. I found that after writing something like this, I wanted a change of tone and pace for me as a writer, and I think that's not uncommon. I have quite a few writer friends who do write in different genres, and sometimes they write under different names, and we'll look at that as well. So after writing two of these, in fact I wrote this one and then I wrote The Winter Witch, I thought, well, now I'd quite like a change of pace, change of scene for myself in my little writer's shed. So I decided to write something that was basically a comedy, although as it turned out, these books are in fact comic, crime, historical fantasy, so they're real hybrids. This is book 3 in the series, The Case of the Fickle Mermaid, and these stories are, each book centres around a different crime that the Detective Gretel, solves. And it's very much satire, it's quite dark humour, they're adult books, they're not children's books, although they do have a sort of pseudo fairy tale setting. They're set in Bavaria in the late 18th century, although it's my idea of Bavaria in the late 18th century, and I enjoy using anachronisms. I enjoy having martini cocktails and all sorts of different things that probably weren't around at that time, and I play with the form and really enjoy doing so, and in a way that I wouldn't with my other historical fantasies. So do I get mixed up? No, I tend not to be writing both books at the same time. I will write a book from one series, have a break, then start a book on another series, and that separation allows me to put aside that tone and that type of writing and pick up that tone and that type of writing, which gives me a break. It's refreshing for my creativity. It gives me a complete change of tactic in the way I approach the structure of the book, in the way I plan it, because these books are crime books. I find I have to plan them in a different way, otherwise I quite literally lose the plot. I lose the sense of where the crime story is going. I have to put clues in that maybe I wouldn't think of. Although having said that, these have a mystery element to them. There is always a puzzle to solve in them too. So it wasn't as big a leap as you might think. It is the tone of the book that is probably the most important thing to keep consistent, and that's why I think it is difficult to write two different genres if the tone is very different. But it's also stimulating for the writer, it's challenging, and I think it keeps your writing fresh. And I would say do it, you know, if you want to branch out into different genres. From the point of view of expanding your skills as a writer, testing yourself, keeping your writing fresh, yes, I think it's brilliant. Is it confusing when you come to be working on two books at the same time, which you will, because most likely you'll be writing one while you're editing another one? Well, I've got two teenage children and they have to do different subjects in the morning to the subject they do in the afternoon. Women are quite used to being multi-skilled and multitasked and have to do different jobs, 2 or 3 things at a time. I don't think it's impossible to separate your creativity in a similar way. I think I can work on one book in the morning and a different book in the afternoon. You just have to be disciplined about it, and that can be hard if you're really on a roll with one of the books because you just want to keep going with that book. And that pull is really strong, and I have been known to sort of put one book aside for a while, spend a couple of weeks just focusing on one. Mostly I find the easiest way to get around that is just to organise your writing schedule as best you can, because it's not always just in your control, I'm here to tell you, so that you are not actually writing 2 books at the same time. You might be working on an idea for one book, writing another book, on the later stages of the edits for another book, maybe the proofreading, something like that, and then marketing of another book. Once you're into the whole system, that's quite common. So that's quite different. Editing is very different to actually producing, for instance, the big first draft of a novel. So I don't find a problem or a conflict in my imagination or the way I work with working on 2 books at once in that respect. Where you will find a conflict is from the point of view of your publisher, because you may have 2 different publishers. I have 2 different publishers for these books in America. So this publisher is expecting this type of book from me, and we're working very much with me as a writer of this type of book. And what you don't want to do is muddy the brand. You don't want to confuse your readers. So we've used a different name here, so that although it's Brackston, it is PJ Brackston, and that signals to the book buyers and the booksellers that yes, it is the same author, but writing a different type of book. And I don't want to confuse my readers or disappoint them or have their expectations for one type of thing and then give them something else, because nobody's going to like that. I don't like that when that happens to me. So I think you need to be clear if you're going to write in 2 different genres and get those books out there, whether they're all from the same publisher, whether you're self-publishing or using different publishers. Make sure that it's easy for the booksellers and the readers to know what they're getting. This is the comedy version and the other one isn't, okay? And then if you're writing something completely different again, sorry agents, sorry editors, then you need to have, in my opinion, a pen name that really does separate you, a style of production. Everything needs to be different. This book is one I actually wrote a few years ago. I think this came out in 2009, 2010, it's so long ago I can't remember. This is Nutters, and as you'll see, it's written by this strange person here called PJ Davy. Well, PJ, my initials. Davy was my grandmother's name, so that's how I came up with that pen name, and we'll look into writing under different names in another video. But for this one, this is a piece of literary fiction. It's a one-off standalone novel. It's a comic novel, but again, it's dark comedy, it's not crime, it doesn't fit into any of these things, it's not a series, and in fact when I wrote this one I hadn't started the Gretel books, so this was a completely different piece of work, and it had to come out under a different name with different packaging. And in fact, it came out just after The Witch's Daughter, when it was first published as The Book of Shadows. I had the same publisher publish this one for me because they were very helpful and encouraging of a new writer. But it is a very difficult sell, because from the point of view of the booksellers, who are your gatekeepers for to find your readers, they've got to start all over again. They can't use the fact that you've already written other books. They can't risk the overlap in the readership working almost against you. So you have to be a completely new author, and we'll look at this in greater depth at how that affects your marketing and the placing of your books, because I think that's worthy of several videos on its own. But what was the experience like? Well, this was a story idea I'd had for ages. It's probably the most biographical book that I've ever written. The fact that it's called Nutters, I'll just let you work that one out for yourself. The little log line here is mad, sad and dangerous to no one. And it's a comedy about people with mental health issues. This was actually shortlisted for the Mind Book Award the year it came out, which was lovely. Is it niche? Yes, it is a niche book. It's not a book I wrote with my commercial hat on. This was a book that was very dear to my heart, and I wanted to get out there, and I was lucky to have it noticed like that, and it's really special to me. But you have to recognise that maybe that sort of genre is not going to reach the numbers that something that's more conventional has the power to reach. I think if you're a reader who's looking for more books from your favourite author, and that author comes up with a different genre, well, you haven't got a lot to lose by giving it a go, but recognise that it is going to be very different. And that tone is quite unsettling if you're used to a certain voice from the author. Now, we will have videos about your writing voice for you writers out there who've been told you have to find your voice as a writer. A bit of shock news here. I don't believe there is such a thing as a writer's voice. I actually think if you read these 3 books from cover to cover without my name on them, you would not say these books were written by the same person. I believe that we choose a writing style to suit the type of book we're writing, and I believe that we often write in the voice of our characters, or even the narrator if we're using a narrator, and I don't actually think I have a writing voice. So it's not popular on writing courses to come up with something like that, because so much has been written about finding a writing voice. Well, I haven't found mine. I don't know where it is. I don't look for it anymore. I just write in the style I want to write that suits that genre, and that, I think, once you've got that idea in your head, it frees you up. It allows your creativity to go where it wants to go, and if the books feel very different, I'm not worried about that. I'm not worried that people will say this isn't a Paula Brackston book. It's not important. I might not even be Paula Brackston when I'm writing it. I mean, I have a bit of news to tell you about that later on, and I will do another video about it, about how many different personas you can have and how that can work for you as a writer. Okay, so that's me on writing for different genres. We'll probably revisit this topic again. Don't forget to subscribe if you think this is helpful. Do remember to share it with people. Let me know what you think in the comments. Have you ever been tripped up by buying a book by an author that you knew and then finding they'd written something different? Or are you writing in one genre and worried that you're going to get pigeonholed and have to always write in that particular category? Let us know, and good luck with your writing and happy reading.